If you have ever ridden with me in my car before, you have heard the soundtrack to Neo: The World Ends With You. Throughout this countdown, I think I've talked about video game soundtracks more than the average person might choose to, but I don't think I've ever started off one of these segments by talking about the soundtrack. However, Neo simply requires it. The music of The World Ends With You sounds unapologetically contemporary, completely and totally selling the idea that it could exist in this probably slightly more hip than usual Shibuya. It does this while boasting perhaps the greatest genre diversity I've ever seen in a game that aims for really traditional sounding music, outside of rhythm games at least. Which is a fact that I know to be true, yet once again, my lack of music literacy prevents me from conveying that effectively. I know that there are fancy, nuanced names for music genres if you want to sound all accurate, but if you were to ask me to explain what musical genres exist in Neo: The World Ends With You, I could tell you there's pop, rock, hip-hop, metal, EDM, maybe, assuming that's a real genre and not just something No Straight Roads made up, the screamy music that the scary people in high school listen to, shop themes. Now that's a music genre I have a lot of experience with. This game has a solid shop theme. Neo: The World Ends With You's music is too bespoke in what it's going for me to reasonably call it the greatest game soundtrack of all time, but I have to be completely honest with you and say that when I consider the greatest game soundtracks, it enters my brain rather quickly. And it will likely become my most listened to game soundtrack ever because it's so easy to put on in the car with non-gamers! I cannot tell you how valuable that is to me these days. This segment already feels longer than pretty much any segment from the first half of this countdown, and I have only talked about the music, so is the soundtrack all this game has of value to offer? If there's another area where Neo absolutely steps up from its predecessor, it's the gameplay. Fights happen at a blistering pace as you change which character you're controlling via a single button input in a fusion between action RPG and real-time RPG that is consistently engaging with a great sense of discovery. You are given new powers, abilities, and attacks constantly, such that you'll never get a chance to use them all, let alone experiment with every possible combination. Matching the game's setting, the core systems are aggressively modern, especially by JRPG standards. The way stats increase in this game is so breezy and even joyfully fun. Outfits being attached to in-game brands is such an awesome bit of world context to your gear that makes it really come alive. In true World Ends With You fashion, your preconceptions about how the JRPG genre works is constantly tested and subverted, which is just so thrilling when you have a ton of these games under your belt. You can tell they appreciated the freedom that came with making a sequel to a DS game because, well, we literally can't do the gameplay from the DS anymore, so we get to make something totally new. I'm not even going to talk about the story, I'm going to talk about the characters. The main cast of characters in this game, I think, are so cool because they suck! Okay, they don't suck, but they are intentionally kind of unremarkable. They're not bad people, they just lack charisma or importance or presence. They're not even necessarily outcasts, they're just teenagers. Honest to goodness, hasn't figured out how to be a normal human quite yet. Teenagers. And I love that. Because I used to be that, we all did. How many works of fiction have we seen where high schoolers are shown to be these super likable, charismatic, reasonable people? Even media that focuses on so-called outcasts always present me with characters that I would very much enjoy hanging out with. The characters of Neo feel so authentic. They're still strangely dressed, emotionally reserved teenagers who can't talk about their feelings well and are addicted to their phones the entire game. You learn slowly to identify how they express themselves, how they talk about their problems, how they support each other. Not in big, overly written ways that are shoved in your face, but in small, nuanced ways that you need to be paying attention to. I am honestly shocked by how well liked the Neo characters are culturally, because the experience I just described to you seems like a pretty niche thing that I wouldn't expect a lot of people to digest the same way I did. But I have really loved seeing people younger than me identify with this cast. When I explore World Ends With You circles on the internet, I almost exclusively see Neo stuff, which is awesome. The fans were waiting over a decade for their sequel. They campaigned hard, and I'm certain the developers must have too in order to get this project across the finish line. And in the end, I think the product we got lived up to that effort.